Hello, gunfighters. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and all aspects of guns and defense and hunting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. It's a shorter episode on a cartridge. I think I'm going to forego the bio, except to say first and foremost, I am a Christian. God is central to my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different. Let's get into the day's topic on the 480 Ruger. The forgotten big bore? Maybe. Now, people may have different ideas of what they consider a big bore handgun, but I would consider the first one to be talking big bore Magnum cartridge, the 44 Magnum, a great cartridge. It's still going strong. You got your 454 Casull, slightly outdoes the 44 Magnum. You could get mad at that, but it's true. It slightly outdoes it. Then, if you want more power than that, you go up to the 460 Smith & Wesson. It's basically lengthening a 45 long Colt, the 454 Casull, lengthening it even more to get the 460. And if you want the big daddy of big bore revolver cartridges, the 500 Smith & Wesson, a half-inch diameter of lead moving down range. Why then, if you have the 460 and the 500, why the 480 Ruger? And I think that's the reason it's often overlooked, but I think it's a little bit of an underrated cartridge. And here's why. One, I think it predates it, right? So I believe it came out before the 460 and the 500. But also, if you've ever been around, handled, shot an X-frame revolver, the Smith & Wesson X-frames, which is what the 460 and 500 are chambered in, they are, big is not the word, right? A 44 Magnum revolver is big. A Ruger Red Hawk is a big revolver. A Ruger Red Hawk is a little bit bigger revolver. The Smith & Wesson X-frames, to me, are kind of handguns in name only. Meaning that a Red Hawk, a Super Red Hawk, something like that, they're big. They're big, heavy handguns, but I can shoot them pretty much the way I would shoot a handgun. The X-frames are just so big that it requires, for lack of a better term, a different manual of arms, and maybe even a different shooting techniques. Well, if I spend my life as a gunfighter, as a trainer, as a teacher, with continuity of training, that doesn't appeal to me. It may not appeal to you. A handgun so big that, again, to me, it's a handgun in name only. And I love handguns. They're what I train with the most. I love them because they're challenging, they're hard, and they're very hard to hunt with. I like handgun hunting. I've been blessed to take many, many animals with a handgun. More deer than I can honestly remember with a handgun. I do it because it's challenging. If you want like a really beefy gun to take big animals with, to say that you killed them with a handgun, and you do if you kill them with a 500 Smith & Wesson, X-frame, but they're a giant gun. If you have a revolver so big that it has a bipod and you're laying prone resting it on something, is that the same as, shooting offhand with a traditional sized handgun? Not to me, but to many they wouldn't see the distinction there. So I guess that was a bit of a tangent as to why the 480 Ruger. Well, unlike the 460 and unlike the 500 Smith & Wesson, the 480 is chambered in what I would consider reasonable sized big bore revolvers. A little bit bigger than you're going to get some 44 Magnums, and I mean the Smith & Wesson 69 is a very nice size 5-shot 44 Magnum. They also make that scandium frame if you're talking about a lightweight, as far as weight goes, the same weight as a lot of CCW guns in 44 Magnum. The classic Smith & Wesson 29 is a big handgun. Despite Dirty Harry, I don't think it's a great, concealed carry gun, but it's an easily belt carryable gun. You get a little bit bigger when you get into the Ruger Super Red Hawk, but not so much bigger. It's a large handgun, but it's not comically large to me. Like, I can shoot it like I would shoot most other handguns. When I was doing some research, they make a Ruger Super Red Hawk Alaskan that's in the 40-something ounce range. And that's right around the weight of a 1911. 1911 is a big handgun, but it's not a comically big handgun. It's a big, full-size handgun. You can get a Ruger Super Red Hawk in that size. That's a much more manageable, reasonable size than an X-frame. An X-frame is a very, very large gun. So I think that is why it's overlooked. For that reason alone, you can put it in a Ruger Super Red Hawk. And a Ruger Super Red Hawk is a manageable sized handgun, in my opinion. They make it in that short Alaskan for defense against big animals. And they make it in the longer hunting version of the Super Red Hawk where you can mount a scope on it. It's, you get more velocity in the longer barrel lengths. It will be a fine handgun hunting round for anything. I mean, the 480 Ruger, we'll get into performance in a minute as far as numbers go. We'll nerd out on that. But it'll kill anything on the planet that walks on four legs. Right? And you don't need it for deer. It certainly will take deer. But a .357 Magnum is just fine for deer. So, if you're hunting deer with it, you're just doing it because you want to do it, which is fine. You just like a big, heavy bullet. And if you like the big, heavy bullet, if you want to go to the 500, which is the only thing I'm aware of that's larger, then you have to go to an X-frame. And again, that's a really, really big handgun. I also saw, talking about guns, before we get into performance, that Taurus, at one time at least, made a 480 Ruger. Up until recently, I wouldn't have recommended something that powerful in a Taurus, but I think Taurus's quality control has come up recently, so do your own due diligence on that, but they did make one. And I saw Magnum Research makes a BFR, single action M480 Ruger. Okay, with that, let's actually get into some numbers here. How does the 480 Ruger stack up? Despite the name 480, it's not .480, it's .475 diameter bullet, which is not uncommon. Cartridges are misnamed for bullet diameter all the time. The 38 Special is not 38 caliber, it's .357 caliber. Anyway, it's .475 caliber, the 480 Ruger. I'm going to be looking at my old trusty Hornady reloading manual here for some data. Loads may differ. I'll be honest, the Hornady reloading manual, in my opinion, does not list the hottest loads you can find in reloading manuals, but it's a good benchmark comparing apples to apples to a couple of different loads in the same manual. The 480 Ruger, 325 grain bullet at 1500 feet a second. 325 at 1500, and again, this is pistol. We're not talking carbine velocities. That's a cooking round. If we go up to 400 grains, we're talking 400 grains at 1250. Well, how does that compare? If we look at the 44 Magnum, which again I would consider the first and the beginning of the big bore Magnum handgun cartridges, we'll just go to the top end here, the 300 grain, because that's most comparable. You're looking at 300 grain in this manual at 1400 feet a second. 300 grains at 1400 feet a second. Again, the 480 Ruger was 325 at 1500. So more on both ends. More grain weight, more velocity. It's definitely outdoing the 44 Magnum, for sure, not even a debate. If we look at the 454 Casull, we top out in this manual 300 grains. And I know you can get heavier 44 mags, and I know you can get heavier 454 Casull, but I'm talking about trying to compare apples to apples. In this manual, we got a 300 grain bullet at 1650. So a little bit lighter, but more velocity. Which one do you prefer, really? The 460 Smith & Wesson in this manual also lists a 300 at 1650. If we move up to the half inch, the 500 Smith & Wesson, we got a 300 grain at 2000. There is no doubt that is far, far more powerful, right? 300 grains at 2,000 feet a second. That's getting up there into an intermediate rifle cartridge velocity with a heavier bullet. It's a beast It's a beast. And you can go all the way up to the 500 grain, 500 Smith & Wesson, at 1350. So we see it doing pretty comparable velocities with a 500 grain bullet as the 480 did. Kind of in the middle of the 325 and the 400 grain, which were 1500 and 1250. And you're getting 1350 with a 500 grain bullet. That's a beast. Okay, so a couple of things holding this 480 Ruger back, I think. One is there are not a lot of guns chambered in it, which could easily be rectified. But the other one is it's an odd caliber bullet. It's an odd diameter bullet. .475. The 460 Smith & Wesson is probably the most versatile in that you can shoot 460 Smith & Wesson out of the same revolver, 454 Casull, and 45 Colt. Probably some other ones, but common ones, all those. So you can shoot pretty mild 45 Colts in your 460 or your 454 Casull. It's a lot more flexible of a round, and 45 diameter bullets, .452 diameter bullets, are way, way more common. There's a ton of other cartridges that share that same caliber diameter bullet, .452. So you get way more flexibility there. Even the 44 Magnum, right? You can shoot 44 Special in it. The 480 doesn't really have that. Right, you get 480, you shoot 480 in it. If you hand load, it's still kind of a pain because, again, there are not a lot of .475 diameter bullets. Nowhere near the amount of 44 caliber and 45 caliber bullets. So you don't get that. Now, if you hand load, you probably know this, but if you don't hand load, you can't just cut the powder in half, right? That's not a safe practice. You have to do your diligence and stick with published data. So you can't just be like, oh, I don't want to shoot powerful rounds today. I'm just going to cut my powder charge in half and load it up. Not really how that works. So it's nowhere near, I don't think, as flexible a cartridge as some other cartridges. So I think those are the things that is holding it back. But I still think it's underappreciated because you can get this round that hangs right in there with the bigger cartridges, and honestly would kill anything on 4 feet on the planet. And you don't have to go to, in my opinion, the kind of comically large revolvers. You can get it in a big, but not crazy big revolver. And I think that is worth something. Now, I'm going to close with something a little bit different. One of the coolest guns chambered in this. If, one of the listeners contacted me and said, you did such a good job on the podcast, and on this episode, I'm going to buy for you any 480 caliber gun that has hitherto existed. I'd be like, that's awesome. And the one that I would pick would be the Ruger Super Red Hawk, but not the one they make today, not the standard stainless steel, which is a good gun. I much prefer it to blued. But Ruger, for a time, made revolvers in this beautiful kind of dark gray graphite finish. It's one of the most stunning and beautiful finishes I've ever seen on a firearm. You ever get memory burn where you see something that's just kind of burned into your memory? When I was a young child, I don't know, I was old enough to hunt because I remember we were, going hunting. But one of my father's friends opened this case, and I remember seeing this gun. I don't know that it was in 480, but it was a Ruger big bore revolver in this beautiful dark graphite gunmetal gray finish, and I thought that's one of the most beautiful guns I've ever seen. And I still think any of those revolvers made in that dark graphite gray, when you see it, you'll know it doesn't look like a stainless, it doesn't look like a blued. I wish they'd bring that finish back. It's just beautiful. They made, I see a picture of it, that 480 in that dark graphite gunmetal gray finish. Just beautiful. What a cool gun. Anyway, there's a lot of other cool guns. Again, the BFR is a fine single action revolver. If you prefer single actions, they make that in 480 Ruger. And if you want to have a long gun in the same caliber, they actually did make a lever gun in .480 Ruger, the Puma, which people may, discount those, but I had I believe it was either Rossi Puma, or I had one in 44 mag lever action, and that thing was crazy accurate. It's one of the guns I kind of sold because I didn't have a purpose for it at the time. But talk about a fantastic, mine was crazy accurate, sample size of 1, but it was really, really a good light handy gun. They made that similar gun in stainless steel, which I like, in .480. That's pretty neat. Anyway, .480 Ruger, it's got some drawbacks. It's not for everybody, but I still think it's underappreciated and kind of the overlooked, I think often overlooked, big bore cartridge. Anyway, with that, I want to say thanks for listening to this episode. A lot of people really like these obscure cartridge talks. It's surprising to me. I'm here to serve you guys, right? So, a lot of times these do really well, the obscure cartridges. So if you listen to this podcast, I want to say thank you. I'm here to serve you guys, so hopefully I can do some more. If there's a cartridge I haven't talked about that you would like me to talk about, the next one I'm thinking about talking about is the 348 Winchester. But anyway, reach out to me, right? I'd like to hear from you, goodshepherdtraining.com, or you can leave a comment on the podcast itself on a lot of the platforms. If you are not following the podcast, I hope that you do that. And if you listen on YouTube, I know that a lot of people listen to these obscure cartridge ones on YouTube. If you do that, know that I'm primarily a podcaster. If you're not into podcasting, try it out. Try going to Spotify or iTunes. Those are the big two. You can listen for free and maybe subscribe to it, and learn about other things. But primarily a podcaster. Gunfighter Life podcast on Spotify, iTunes. I just honestly kind of put them on YouTube as an afterthought. It's like one button I have to click. Anyway, with that, the tactical tip of the day and the tactical verse of the day. You're probably a pretty manly man if you're out there shooting .480 Ruger. You know what's good for strong, healthy, manly men? Peanut butter. Peanut butter's awesome. I'm looking at a half-empty jar of peanut butter in front of me right now. Now, I'm pretty extreme on the peanut butter. A little story, not this past birthday, but the one before that, people asked me what I wanted, and I said peanut butter. And various people, and myself included, got myself peanut butter for my birthday. I got 90-something pounds of peanut butter. It didn't even go close to making it through the year. I ate a lot of peanut butter. One of those was mostly empty, but was destroyed by a wildfire. I was bugging out literally, so got out in a hurry. That was a casualty of the wildfire, that tub of peanut butter. But pretty much all the other ones got ate. I think I may still have one of those old tubs because it came in a pretty convenient tub that I saved for, apocalypse food, bug out food. But peanut butter's awesome. That's not a tactical tip. If you want to up the manly nutrition of that, get some protein powder and mix it in with your peanut butter. When your jar's about half empty, dump about 80% of the jar till it's full of protein powder. Take a stick, take a knife, take a spoon, whatever, and mix it in with the peanut butter. You're going to greatly increase the protein content. It's a nice handy little snack. You put it in there, you mix it up, put the cap back on it, you take it with you for the day for your rations. A lot cheaper and certainly probably a lot healthier than going out to get fast food. And you experiment with whatever flavors you like, right? But you can make some pretty good tasting concoctions. Mix it with some chocolate protein powder, even peanut flavored protein powder. The one that I don't like really is vanilla. For some reason I don't like it mixed in there. But anyway, do your own thing on that, but mixing the protein powder in with the peanut butter is pretty manly, pretty awesome, high source of good quality fat and protein. Everything the strong gunfighter needs as far as your macros in your nutrition. Anyway, that's your tactical tip of the day. Tactical verse of the day. Well, along those lines, how about, he satisfies my mouth with good things, so that my youth is renewed like the eagles. Remember, whatever you eat, whatever you own, whatever you shoot, it's a gift from God. And God is the provider. Let's not forget about the giver and focus on the gifts. You should be thankful for the gifts, grateful for the gifts, but give glory to the giver of all good things, Almighty God. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.